something we want to be aware of, something we want to keep in our mind and have in our heads a good understanding of. Additional protocols. We're going to talk about a lot of them in this discussion, and they're just going to keep coming fast and furious. So Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, DHCP, protocol that we often are hearing about, we often hopefully have some sense of and familiarity with. This is how we can dynamically assign one or more IP addresses to a system. We make a request from a DHCP server in order to gain that IP address for what we call a lease or a period of time. Through the period of time or the lease, that IP address becomes ours. We make a registration of that address that we are being given and given the rights to use for a period of time in a DHCP database so that we can keep track of all the IP addresses that are being used. And then after the lease has expired, we either renew the IP address, keeping it going for another period of time by extending the lease, and or we opt out. We say, you know, we're done. We don't need it anymore. Thank you. Give it back. Put it back in what's called the address pool. The pool is the group of IP addresses that are available for people to use that we can lease out of. And then we effectively just return it and somebody else gets to use it. Much like a library book. You take it out for a period of time, you hold on to it. When you're done, you give it back, and somebody else who's waiting can effectively take that book. There's only one copy of each book in the system. It's unique, and so you can only have that IP address existing on that machine assigned for you or whoever gets the rights to use it for that period of time. If we have a duplicate for some reason, we have an error because we have to have unique IP addresses to understand how to send and receive information. So if we have a duplicate, we're going to have an error situation, and we're going to have to fix that because one of those two addresses that is now duplicated is incorrectly assigned. Somebody keyed it in, didn't realize, or somebody randomly chose that one, didn't realize was being used. There's different reasons why that can happen. Not too worried about that so much right now, just more worried about the fact that if we do have a duplicate, we get an error situation. It pops up a little notice on our screen. You may have seen that from time to time. Little dialog box, IP address conflict, and we have to go and either reset our address or figure out who the other machine is that may have the error. One of us has to back off and change our IP. And once we do that, everything will work fine. The way DHCP works ultimately is through a 4-step process. We can see the steps on the screen in front of us from the workstation. The workstation is simply going to be the machine that's requesting the IP address from the DHCP server. It doesn't have to be a workstation. It could be any IP-enabled device. It could be your mobile phone, could be a laptop, a desktop, a server, a tablet, could be your car if your car has an IP-enabled interface, could be your home alarm system or your home controller that does things like control the lights and the temperature. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be your toaster oven. Whatever has an IP-enabled interface on it, if it's going to request a DHCP-based address from a server, that's what's going to be using step 1. Just whatever that endpoint is. So we're going to send out through broadcasting a DHCP discover request on the LAN upon booting up. And when we do that, we are very important to understand broadcasting because we don't have an IP address right now. So effectively, we have to send out a generic call to anybody who will listen out there using what's called a broadcast address. The broadcast address is going to be all 255. So when we look at the IP address,